really quick just to tell you all about interviews in travel nursing, because we all know that the interview process for travel nursing is very, very different than the interview process for staff nursing. But if you've never done one before, you have no idea how it's different, right? So I'm going to compare the two and break it down so that you feel prepared going into your next travel nurse job interview. So if you're watching this video, I assume that you're already a staff nurse, because you have to have staff nurse experience before you become a travel nurse. Or if you're looking into it, continue to watch. But if you already are a staff nurse, you know that you set up an interview, you apply for the job online, the manager calls you, and you come into the office. And so a lot of times, you know, you'll go to the unit manager's office or the supervisor, you sit down with them, you have a face-to-face interview, and they're very like the typical interview questions, the ones that you can get asked anywhere. Like, you know, have you ever been in a situation that was difficult? What did you do to solve the issue? You know, things like that. And so there's a list of questions, and it can kind of feel like you're in there for a long time. My staff nurse interview was super different because it was where I took my practicum, and so it was fairly short because the boss already knew me. But there are those like full length of questions that you typically do go through with your manager. Now, travel nursing interview, completely different. You're not going into an office. So you're at home and you're applying for jobs everywhere all over the country. Hopefully, that's how I am. I submit everywhere. And so you're submitting all of these places. It would be crazy for them to expect you to like fly everywhere and have an interview, right? Yes. So that's not what happens. You take your interview from home. So you can literally like be sitting on the couch in your PJs. It's not a Zoom or virtual interview where they can see you. It's literally just a phone call. And so the manager calls you, and that's how the interview goes. They're just like, hey, I saw your application. I saw that you applied for this. I saw your resume. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself? I'll tell you guys, these interviews have been so easy. Even for my very first travel nurse assignment, which was, you know, everyone said would be the hardest to get, and it did take me the longest to get. I will not lie, it did take me the longest. The interview itself was just relaxed, and I felt so calm, especially since the person can't see you. Because let's be honest, like, you can make whatever face you want to make, you can pause and take a second. They have no idea what you're doing on the other side of that phone. And so the questions were very surface level in that very first interview, and it was just like, oh, how was your experience? What kind of patients did you have? You know, what's making you get into travel nursing? It was very, very easy and chill. The hardest interview that I have ever had, I just want to discuss that. And it wasn't even really hard, but it just was things that I wasn't really expecting. It was an interview that I took for a job in Albuquerque, New Mexico. And the manager called me. The interview itself probably lasted about 5 minutes. It was the typical travel nurse interview where he was just like, hey, I saw your application. Your name is Courtney. Tell me about yourself. Tell me about your experience. And a lot of times they won't even ask you to go through your full experience. They'll be like, oh, I saw that you worked in this ICU, and I saw that it has 14 beds, because all of that stuff you have filled out for your agency. So they know every single thing about you. They know the typical patients that you were getting at your last job, because you have to tell all that to your agency. They know how many beds were on the unit. They know the patient to nurse ratio. They know everything, because you have to fill all that stuff out. And so the interview is pretty much just them going over the information that they already see on the paper, and they're just like, oh, I saw that you worked here. Oh, I saw that you had this type of patients. How do you feel about these type of patients that we have? Or, you know, different things about the facility that may be different from whatever is on your resume sheet. But anywho, back to this interview. So the manager, he's like, you know, starts off really, really typical. So he saw that I had neuroscience experience, which is like all of my experience. I've only ever worked in a neuroscience ICU. And so he starts asking me neuroscience questions, which I was like, okay, like your nurses must be top-notch and super skilled, because they have to know these things at the drop of a hat. And he was like, so, you know, if your patient's ICP is really high, what can you do as a nursing intervention? What can you do immediately in the room to get their ICP to drop? Without a doctor's order, what can you do for the patient? And I was like, oh, I know this. Thankfully, you know, make sure they're sitting up straight, make sure their neck is in a neutral position and their head's not slumped to the side, because that can do things, guys. Positioning is important. You know, ask, can you hyperventilate them on the vent, turn up their rate. So things like that, I was just like, and he was like, okay, I don't need to ask you anything else. When can you be here? When can you start? And so, yeah, that was like the first time though that someone was like, so how do you treat this? And that kind of threw me off. But then like another interview I had, the last interview I had actually for the job that I'm working at here in Atlanta, super relaxed, super chill, just like the standard going over, you know, my resume. The one thing that she did ask, she asked, so what would you say is a travel nurse's role in the hospital? Like, what do you feel like is your role coming into an assignment? That was like one question that I had never heard before. And so I was like, you know, I feel like I'm there to fill a space. I'm there to fill a need. I'm there to like fit in the holes that needs to be filled at that current time. And her response was amazing. She was like, well, you know, that may have been how it's been everywhere else that you worked, but that's not how I see it. Like, I see you all as family. I would love for you all to stay. You're going to be treated like staff. And I was like, oh girl, this is okay, all right. But when she went through my resume, she was like, you know, we don't see a lot of nurses that are in this specialty specifically, so I'm gonna get you over your contract. A lot of times in the interviews though, guys, literally every single time that I've interviewed for a job that I have taken, they have told me in the interview, all right, well, I will send the contract over to your agency. And so like by the time I've gotten off the phone, I've already known that I've had the job. I mean, these are typical travel nursing jobs, like the 13-week jobs that you see listed on your agency's site. Yeah, it's always been super chill, super easy. And at the end of the phone interview, I'm like, okay, great. I know that I have a job. And so then after that, it just starts the whole process behind the scenes, which I have posted a video about, like how to prepare for your assignment. You know, then you start finding out like all of the modules you need to take, all the trainings you need to do, all of that is in that other video if you guys are interested in that information. But I hope this little bit of information has prepared you just a little bit more for the interview that you are preparing for, the reason why you clicked on this video. Do not forget to subscribe so you will not miss my next video. And all of the links to follow me are below in my description box. Thanks guys. I will see you all next time.